Welcome back to the channel. This week I'm giving a bit of an update on how the vest pattern is progressing. We're making a few last minute changes. I'd like some input on some questions, and we're just working to make it perfect before it launches. So in a previous video, I talked about the inspiration and creating this project from scratch and why it was on my spring kind of exciting to work on to-do list. And part of that reason was I was going to spend an awful lot of the spring in airports, on airplanes, on trains, no surprise, on automobiles. At one point, I even ended up on trams. And if travel wasn't as complicated as planes, trains, and automobiles, we added some boats and even a repositioning cruise to get where we needed to go. So I had immense fun working on taking this kind of idea list and inspiration board and making a very first prototype for it. And in the first video, I talked about the fact that I used some scrap fabric and made a template from some previous vests that I owned. So I had knit vests, I had crocheted a very first vest. It was a pretty boxy kind of vest. I had more of a menswear inspired fabric vest that I have worn a lot, and that was more what I was inspired to do and couldn't find any patterns for. So I was wanting to be able to, again, just wrap up the yarn in this kind of template and take it on the road, put it in my backpack, and make it easy to work on as I traveled. And that worked absolutely great. So I started off by using two yarns that I had selected that I thought would suit, again, the drape and what I was looking for in the past. And I'm really trying to create a prototype that is something special. So take a very simple menswear inspired vest and make it one of the most wearable pieces I will add to my travel wardrobe. So let me show you how this evolved as I worked on the prototype and see if you are going to be interested in making one too. I'll talk about some of the design changes that came up as I went through and figured stuff out. There was quite a few fit challenges, and at the end I'll also talk about why this is going to be a paid pattern and where the proceeds are going to go to, because crochet is kind of how I process the world. I loved working on this in all of the airports and waiting rooms, but over the spring I wanted also to have my creativity give back to some wonderful organizations, so we'll talk about that. So the original inspiration or sketch idea I had mapped out in the first video, and the basic construction idea and what I was kind of liking about it. But you know me, if you've watched previous videos, you know I don't really follow patterns. I kind of have conversations with them, and I get excited about kind of adapting things. And so I found that kind of helped with this process as well, trying to figure out what kind of felt right about the pattern. And as I worked through the prototype, what I already knew I would have to change, and, you know, kind of mid-process figure some of these kind of things out. So in the first video, I really was inspired to do a slip stitch back loop only pattern, but I really talked about if I did the whole vest in that, it might be too flat. For me, it's not inspiring enough. I like handmade pieces. I wanted it to have a bit more visual interest, and I also love stripes. So my idea as I started to work through just even the first few rows of the prototype was to say, you know, with the yarn choices I had, did this stitch repeat pattern kind of work up well? Am I liking it? And I did. It felt good. It was one of the things early on that I started, and I was like, I like this. I like the drape. I like the yarn. I like the stitch combinations. You can see I was picking this up and putting it down a lot as we traveled, and I did have to frog it out because I made some errors. But again, I liked the chunkier 6-row repeat with 2 rows of half double crochet. But if you really like narrow, you know, again, easy adaptations without getting into any other stitch kind of possibility or combination, that this could be something that's easily adapted if you kind of don't like the chunkier bar and you like a kind of maybe 3-row repeat instead of a 6-row repeat. So that was feeling pretty good. And I'm working starting left to right, again, trying to make a as uncomplicated, simple as possible pattern as I could, but something that is sort of unique and a bit different out there. So I worked through the increases on the underarm, again, trying to make it as simple as possible, keep the stitch repeat as simple as possible, but worked out really well to have this sort of point of reference to the ideal kind of pattern shape that I wanted as I worked it through. And my stitch count ended up with, the 6-row repeat being about an inch. And so again, very kind of simplistic. I'm just making sure as I work through here that I'm keeping immensely detailed notes about each increase, each decrease, each stitch count, each row, so that we can flow this into a repeatable pattern if the prototype sorts itself out. So I'm putting this pattern sort of at an intermediate level because it has buttonholes and increases and decreases. And I really did enjoy the process. So if this picture makes you want to squirm and you really hate frogging out, then you'll hate ever creating a pattern. Those that work on patterns know this is a common occurrence as you kind of work backwards. And for me, it isn't something that stresses me completely out. I ended up, taking this yarn, it looks way worse in the photo than it is. I wrap it around my water bottle, and it's all neat and tidy as I frog stuff back and forth. But I do like the process of being able to frog things out, make fixes, make alterations, and end up with something that, you will never have to do this. Hopefully, the pattern that we're working on will be very easy to follow and note each increase, each decrease, which direction you're working on so that you don't have to frog the million times I did. So the first frog on the first panel is I realized quite quickly that the shoulder wasn't high enough and I had not chained enough stitches. And so I frogged right back and even started the beginning chain quite a bit longer than I had originally guesstimated, and worked through to kind of recreate again that left side panel, making it much longer to give me the ideal length that I wanted for this kind of piece once you're finishing it and assembling it together. I'm liking the kind of stitch repeat. I'm liking the patterns. I'm liking the increases. I was experimenting to see, depending on the yarn and choices that you're making, how kind of definitive these points would be and how subtle some of the kind of hemline changes would be as I was working through the pattern. And, deciding at the end of the first panel if I need some major, rethinks, or if I could just proceed and now work on the right panel, picking up on all of the improvements that I made on the left. I ended up frogging out the left panel, just as you saw there. The shoulder still at the end was too short for me, and so after completing a longer right panel, I did go back out and frog out the left and make it match from a height perspective. And so feeling pretty comfortable, these will kind of block out a little bit better, that as I finished off the buttonholes, I was ready to move on to the back. Now the back really should have been the most simple element because we've kind of figured out things like stitch choice and the texture to the panel and color placement. I hadn't got to borders or edging yet, but I was thinking that I was pretty comfortable by the time I got to the back. But there is, of course, in every craft story, an oops moment, something that really didn't work and required some substantive frogging or a design pivot. And it really was, by the time I got to the back, that the fit was quite off and this vest was quite large. And so when I'm pulling it together and kind of just getting a sense of how it will fit, it became really clear that the vest was, even though I had done a lot of measurements, given the yarn choice, given the stretch of the stitch pattern, the original was about 6 inches too big. And so some major size changes and adaptations to be had in order to, as I was testing a medium prototype, really rework the sizing on it. So the length was sorted and I'm quite happy with the length, didn't make any changes there. It was just, most t-shirts I wear are about 20 inches, and I was guessing, anywhere from 20 to 21 required as a medium fit. And again, the back on this one ended up being about 16 inches once I was playing around with fit and trying to get something that, again, looks nice on its own. You can wear it without anything underneath, but also isn't quite as fitted that you can't kind of wear a t-shirt or a long sleeve shirt underneath and kind of really make it adaptable. So that's what we're working on now. And this project kind of reminded me that, again, adapting patterns isn't about, anything, technically advanced. It's really just about listening and, kind of listening to your creativity and kind of commenting on how, the pattern could be improved and how to work it through. So I adjusted quickly. I'm still working through some of the trim options. I'd like there to be, of course, lots of adaptations and things to think through. The slip stitch is an easy one to look at, but I got inspired by a picture in the original inspiration board with a menswear vest that had just the touch of a trim around the neckline, and I quite liked that. So you can see I'm still needing to adapt the armholes that are too big, but I was thinking the stripe up the side would carry around the armhole. Now I'm asking whether or not this sort of just touch of blue around the neckline should extend all the way around the vest, or whether some people would prefer to have just a gray sort of disappearing hem that doesn't have that sort of blue touch to highlight it. So that will be another question for the team to see if you like that. The other question that I have is, would you like to see a narrower shoulder? Or so do you want the shoulder at the top of your shoulder, or just to have it come slightly over? I'm leaning towards a narrower shoulder, but let me know your feedback on that as well. So if you choose to make this vest, just know that, again, all proceeds are going to go to some wonderful cancer charities in Canada. Over the past year, I've worked with a number of related charities, and in particular, I'm quite proud of the fact that across Canada, we've been able to lower the testing limits for cancer testing. So younger people who are getting diagnosed more frequently are able to get access to testing earlier when they're younger, in their 30s or 40s, depending on the types of cancer. And that has significant impact on their ability to get earlier treatment and improve success rates. Look forward to launching the patterns as we put the final touches on the instructions. Make sure we have just the right pictures and videos for you to follow along. And we so look forward to seeing how you create this vest and customize it and share your feedback and all the wonderful examples that we know you're going to go ahead and make.